I want you to do something for a second. Wherever you are right now, just pause and look at your hands.
Just really look at them.
Yeah, exactly. Look at the lines on your palms, the way the light hits your skin, the tiny imperfections. Now look at your surroundings. Maybe you're sitting in a car feeling that subtle rhythmic vibration of the engine through the steering wheel.
Right, or maybe you're in your kitchen.
Right. Listening to the low, constant hum of the refrigerator. Look at the device you're using to listen to us right now. Feel the weight of it in your palm, the temperature of the metal or the plastic.
It feels incredibly real, doesn't it?
It does. It feels undeniably solid. I mean, our entire human experience is built on this absolute trust that what we touch, what we see, what we feel is physically there.
Which is a very natural assumption to make.
But what if I told you that there is a very real, mathematically supported, and frankly, fiercely debated possibility in modern physics and philosophy that absolutely none of it is real, at least not in the way you think it is?
Yeah, that's the kicker.
Right. What if your hands, your car, the device you're holding, the stars you see at night, what if they're nothing more than a highly advanced, unimaginably complex computer program?
It's a massive question.
It is. What if you are inside a matrix?
It's arguably the ultimate existential question. We are talking about the simulation hypothesis.
Yeah.
And, while it sounds like pure science fiction, like something out of a cyberpunk novel or, I don't know, a late-night dorm room conversation.
We've all had those.
Exactly. But it has increasingly become the subject of rigorous, intense academic scrutiny.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. We aren't just talking about philosophers spinning thought experiments anymore. We are talking about astrophysicists, quantum mechanics researchers, information theorists. They're all looking at the fundamental limits of the universe to see if it actually behaves like code.
And that is exactly what we are going to do today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking a stack of mind-bending research, some really dense stuff, and doing something ambitious.
Very ambitious.
We are going to answer whether we are living in a matrix by looking at the hard thermodynamic limits of the universe, the actual cost of computing reality, and the mathematical framework of the multiverse.
We aren't going to just philosophize here.
No, we're going to look at the math to see if a computer could actually run this reality. Our goal today is to explain these really difficult concepts clearly.
Right, without getting bogged down in equations, you'd need a giant chalkboard to solve.
Yeah, exactly. But we are going to go deep enough to truly understand the mechanics of the science. Okay, let's unpack this. But before we take the plunge down the rabbit hole, I want to ask a quick favor.
Please do.
If you love exploring the universe's greatest mysteries with us, please make sure to subscribe to this channel, Decoding the Dark, and hit the like button on this video. It's the best way to support us and ensure we can keep bringing you these deep dives into the unknown.
It really helps a lot.
It does. All right, let's get into it. To even begin understanding the astrophysics of a simulated universe, we have to understand why scientists started taking this seriously in the first place.
Right, why it's a valid scientific pursuit and not just a fun sci-fi trope.
Exactly, and the answer is that the modern debate starts with a trap.
A very clever trap.
A logical, probabilistic trap set by a philosopher that basically forces you into a corner.
It does. And to appreciate the trap, we should briefly touch on the history of this suspicion. Because the idea that reality might be an illusion is ancient.
It goes way back.
Thousands of years ago. I mean, Plato gave us the allegory of the cave, prisoners chained in darkness, watching shadows projected on a wall.
And they're completely convinced that those flat, flickering shadows are the entirety of reality.
Exactly. Then, jump forward to the 17th century, René Descartes pushed it further with his evil demon thought experiment.
Oh, right, the evil demon.
Yeah, he imagined this hypothetical, godlike entity whose sole purpose was to deceive his senses, just projecting a fake external world directly into his mind.
And that's where the famous, "I think, therefore I am," comes from, right?
That's the one. Descartes realized that even if his body was an illusion, even if the whole world was a trick, the very act of him doubting it meant his mind had to exist.
Right, but those are purely philosophical arguments. They are asking, how can we know anything for certain? The modern simulation hypothesis feels entirely different from that.
It is different. The modern framework was laid out by the Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom.
This is the famous 2003 paper, right?
Yes. Are you living in a computer simulation?
Yeah.
Bostrom isn't asking you to just blindly doubt your senses. He is using technological extrapolation, logic, and probability to build a really concrete argument.
Right.
He looks at the trajectory of human technology. specifically our obsession with computing power, virtual reality, historical simulations. And he says that based on where we are headed, you must logically accept one of three propositions.
This is the trilemma.
The famous trilemma.
Let's walk through these three propositions, because when you really think about them, they are incredibly unsettling. So Bostrom basically says that if you look at human progress, Proposition 1 is that almost all civilizations at our level of technological development go extinct before reaching what he calls a post-human stage.
Right.
And by post-human, just to clarify, he means a civilization so technologically mature that they have the capability to run incredibly high-fidelity planetary-scale simulations.
Exactly. They have godlike computing power.
So Proposition 1, we all die before we get the tech. The great filter wipes us out.
Whether through nuclear war, climate collapse, or some other catastrophe we haven't even thought of yet.
It is a grim possibility.
It's grim, but a statistically significant one. I mean, if civilizations inevitably destroy themselves once they unlock sufficient power, then no one ever lives long enough to build the ultimate computer.
Right, which makes sense. But let's look at Proposition 2. Suppose we don't go extinct.
Let's be optimistic.
Right. We survive our technological adolescence, we reach that post-human stage, and we possess that computing power of the gods. Proposition 2 states that these advanced civilizations are almost universally not interested in running ancestor simulations.
Which is a really interesting constraint.
This one always bothered me, to be honest. Why wouldn't they? We love simulations.
We do.
I mean, we play historical video games, we build massive computer models to simulate weather and traffic and economies. Why would an advanced version of us suddenly stop wanting to simulate the past?
Well, there are a few arguments for this. One is strict ethical convergence.
Ethical convergence.
Yeah. A post-human society might realize that creating conscious beings inside a computer program only to subject them to the suffering, the wars, the diseases of human history is morally abhorrent.
Oh, wow.
Right? They might have universal laws against it. It's basically digital torture.
I never thought of it that way. You're creating a universe just to let the people inside it suffer through the bubonic plague?
Exactly. Another possibility is simply that they lose interest. When you are a godlike civilization, simulating the 21st century might be incredibly boring.
Like us playing with a wooden hoop and a stick.
Perfect analogy. They might use their vast computing resources for things we can't even fathom, rather than running a historical reenactment of us.
Okay, so Proposition 1, we die. Proposition 2, we survive, but choose not to build the Matrix because it's unethical or boring.
Right.
Which brings us to Proposition 3, which is the trap.
Here it is.
If Proposition 1 is false,
Right.
and we don't go extinct, and Proposition 2 is false, meaning advanced civilizations do want to run these historical simulations, then Proposition 3 must be true.
And Proposition 3 is?
We are almost certainly living in a computer simulation right now.
The trap snaps shut.
Yeah. But how does he make that leap? Why are we almost certainly in the simulation?
The jump to Proposition 3 relies on something called the indifference principle, or the self-sampling assumption. Let's break down the mechanics of the math here because it's fascinating.
Please do.
If a technologically mature civilization decides to run ancestor simulations, they wouldn't just run one. Given the vast, almost incomprehensible computing resources of a post-human society, they could run thousands, millions, or even billions of simulations simultaneously.
I mean, think of it like a wildly popular video game release.
Right.
A studio doesn't just make one copy of the game to be played by one person.
Exactly.
They distribute millions of copies, and at any given moment, millions of simulated digital worlds are running on consoles all over the globe, totally independent of one another.
That is the perfect way to look at it.
Yeah.
So if a post-human society runs billions of historical simulations, and each of those simulations contains billions of simulated conscious minds, the mathematical odds skew dramatically.
How so?
Well, the number of simulating minds in existence would outnumber the original biological minds in base reality by billions to one.
Oh, I see.
Therefore, if you are a conscious being currently wondering if you are biological or simulated, basic probability dictates that you are overwhelmingly likely to be one of the billions of simulated minds, rather than the incredibly rare single original biological one.
I want to ground this in a visual because that is a lot to wrap your head around.
Good court.
Imagine you walk into a massive cavernous warehouse, and inside this warehouse there are exactly 1,000,000,001 canvases painted with the Mona Lisa.
Okay, 1,000,000,001.
Yeah. One of them is the original masterpiece painted by Leonardo da Vinci. The other 1,000,000,000 are flawless, perfect forgeries, so incredibly detailed that absolutely no human eye or scientific instrument can tell the difference.
They are indistinguishable from the original.
Completely indistinguishable. Now, I blindfold you, spin you around, and tell you to pick one painting at random. You take off the blindfold and look at the painting in your hands. What are the odds that you just happen to grab the single original Da Vinci?
The odds are literally 1 in a billion. I mean, mathematically it's possible, but practically speaking, you are holding a forgery.
Exactly. Wait, let me rephrase that. In this analogy, the original painting is base reality. It's the original biological universe where the first humans evolved.
Right.
The billion forgeries are the ancestor simulations run by post-human civilizations. So if there are a billion simulated realities and only one base reality, the odds that we are the lucky ones sitting in the original universe are practically zero.
That's the power of the indifference principle.
But I have to stop you here and push back on this a little bit.
Let's hear it.
This entire logical trap relies on a massive, glaring assumption. The analogy works beautifully for physical paintings, but does it work for human consciousness?
Ah, that is the big question.
Right. Isn't Bostrom assuming that a simulated mind made of lines of code and running on a hard drive somewhere actually feels conscious? Does a simulated person experience reality the way you and I do?
It's a crucial distinction.
Because if I program a really smart NPC in a video game, it doesn't actually feel pain when it gets shot, does it?
That is a phenomenal pushback, and you've hit on the exact underlying premise of Bostrom's entire argument. The whole trilemma collapses if consciousness requires biology.
Right.
Bostrom's argument relies completely on a concept in the philosophy of mind known as substrate independence.
Substrate independence, break that down for us. What is a substrate in this specific context?
Well, the substrate is the physical material that a process runs on. Biological essentialists believe that consciousness is a unique property of carbon-based biology.
Like there's something special about brain tissue.
Exactly. They think that there is something magically specific about squishy meat, neurons, and chemical synapses that generates the subjective feeling of being alive.
Okay, and substrate independence says what?
It argues the exact opposite. It posits that consciousness is fundamentally an emergent property of information processing.
Information processing.
Right. If you have the right computational structure, if you have the right algorithms processing information in the exact right way, then genuine consciousness will emerge regardless of the physical material running the process.
So under this theory, it absolutely does not matter if the brain is made of carbon-based neurons or rigid silicon microchips or, I don't know, even an unimaginably complex network of wooden gears and levers.
Yep, as long as the system processes the information identically to a human brain, the person inside that system will wake up and feel conscious.
Wow.
Yes. If mental states can supervene on silicon processors just as they do on biological neurons, then replicating the synaptic-level computational activity of a human brain in a supercomputer is sufficient to generate genuine subjective awareness.
So the simulated person wouldn't just act like they are conscious.
No, they would actually feel the warmth of the sun on their face. They would genuinely taste the bitterness of coffee, and they would feel the crushing pang of heartbreak just as vividly as you do.
That is wild.
If substrate independence is a reality, then Bostrom's math holds an iron grip on us.
Which leads to what Bostrom calls a self-defeating prophecy.
Yes, it does.
If you hear all this and stubbornly say, nope, I refuse to believe it, I am definitely not in a simulation, I am a real biological human in base reality, then logically, you are forced to believe either Proposition 1 or Proposition 2.
That is the philosophical trap springing shut. Because if we are not simulated, then those billions of simulations simply don't exist.
And why wouldn't they exist? Because logically, humanity will either go extinct before we invent the technology to build them, that's Proposition 1.
Right.
Or we will fundamentally lose all desire to explore simulation technology and just stagnate, which is Proposition 2.
Therefore, the belief that humanity has a bright, expansive future where we invent godlike computing power is completely incompatible with the belief that we are currently in base reality.
You cannot logically hold both beliefs at the same time.
You really can't.
That is heavy. By aggressively hoping we aren't simulated, we are basically hoping for our own extinction or a massive civilization-wide stagnation.
It's a profound philosophical blueprint. But, as fascinating as Bostrom's logic is, it's just that. It's logic.
It's a thought experiment.
Exactly. It proves that if we have the technology to simulate reality, we probably are a simulation. But that leaves a giant, glaring question that philosophy alone simply can't answer.
Do the laws of physics actually allow for a computer that powerful?
Precisely. Can you actually build a machine capable of simulating an entire universe down to the subatomic level?
If we want to know if we are in a matrix, we have to stop looking at philosophy and start looking at the harsh mathematical realities of astrophysics and thermodynamics.
And this is where the entire conversation shifts drastically. We have to look at the physical cost of computing reality.
Because, as it turns out, computation is not free.
Not at all. You cannot just infinitely scale up a computer processor without running into fundamental laws of nature.
Okay, let's unpack the physics side, because this was one of the most surprising elements in our source material. There's this concept called Landauer's principle.
Yes, Landauer's principle.
And it essentially shatters the illusion that information is just abstract math. It states that information is physical.
It is a deeply foundational concept, and one that is very unintuitive for a lot of people. In 1961, physicist Rolf Landauer was looking at the thermodynamics of computation. He was building on older paradoxes, like Maxwell's demon.
Okay.
Landauer proved mathematically that there is a strict thermodynamic limit to computation in any irreversible computation.
Wait, what does irreversible mean in this context?
It basically means any process where information is erased or overwritten, reducing the number of possible states in a system.
Okay, got it.
In any irreversible computation, there must be an increase in the entropy of the universe.
Erasing data causes entropy. I need to translate that. What does that actually mean in the physical world?
To put it simply, erasing a bit of information fundamentally and physically dissipates heat. It requires energy.
So you can't just delete files for free.
Exactly. You cannot manipulate, overwrite, or delete data without paying a physical energy tax to the universe. Information is not a ghost in the machine. It is fundamentally tied to the thermodynamics of the hardware.
If you're trying to picture this, just think about your own devices. When you are pushing your laptop to its absolute limits, maybe you're rendering a massive 4K video file or running an incredibly intense, graphically demanding video game. What happens?
The physical machine heats up.
Exactly. The cooling fans kick into overdrive. Your laptop gets hot enough to burn your legs. That heat isn't just a design flaw. It is a fundamental law of physics in action.
Processing and erasing information requires energy and dissipates heat.
Now, if a laptop gets that hot just rendering a video game, scale that up. Imagine a computer trying to simulate not just a game level, but the entire physical universe.
That's unfathomable.
Every star, every planet, every grain of sand, every single atom, and the quantum states of the electrons orbiting those atoms. How much information are we actually talking about?
To answer that, physicists use something called the holographic principle and a theoretical limit known as the Wittgenstein bound.
The holographic principle. That sounds very sci-fi.
It does, but it's grounded in serious physics. Without getting lost in the deep equations of quantum gravity, the holographic principle suggests something incredibly strange about how our universe stores information.
Okay, so?
Well, we naturally assume that the amount of information you can fit inside a 3D box depends on the volume of the box.
Right, bigger box, more stuff fits inside.
Exactly. But studies into the physics of black holes reveal that the maximum amount of information a 3D space can hold is actually proportional to its 2D surface area.
Wait, hold on, you lost me. A 3D room is stored on its 2D walls. How does that make any sense?
It is entirely counterintuitive. Think of a security hologram on a credit card.
Okay, I can picture that.
It looks like a fully 3D object, right?
Eh.
But all the information required to generate that 3D image is physically encoded on a flat 2D surface.
Oh,
Jacob Bekenstein discovered that black holes behave similarly. The entropy, or the information content, of a black hole isn't determined by its internal volume, but by the surface area of its event horizon.
That's bizarre, but okay.
This led to the Bekenstein bound, which defines the absolute maximum physical limit of information that can be contained within any given physical region of space.
And when you get down to the quantum level, that limit is extraordinarily small, right? It works out to roughly 1 bit of information per Planck area.
Correct. Imagine taking the fabric of space and drawing a tiny microscopic square grid on it, where each square is 1 Planck length on each side.
And the Planck length is the absolute smallest measurable unit of space in our universe, right? Something like 10 to the negative 35 meters.
Yes, unfathomably small. The Bekenstein bound dictates that the universe can store at an absolute maximum 1 bit of information on each of those incredibly tiny squares on the boundary of a given space.
So nature actually has a physical speed limit for data storage written into the very fabric of space-time itself. Armed with that knowledge, we can look at the incredible 2025 paper by astrophysicist Franco Vasa. He decided to actually crunch the numbers.
He asked a terrifying question.
He asked, what would it physically cost to build a computer that simulates our entire observable universe down to the quantum level, running at full resolution?
And Vasa's calculations are staggering. They completely changed the landscape of the simulation argument.
What did he find?
First, he calculated the total amount of information required to perfectly encode the entire observable universe. He looked at the co-moving radius of the universe,
Which is roughly 14.3 gigaparsecs, right? Or the distance light has traveled since the Big Bang, factoring in the expansion of space.
Right, and he combined that with the critical density of matter. He found that you would need approximately 3.5 times 10 to the power of 124 bits of information.
Let me stop you there, because the human brain fundamentally cannot comprehend a number like 10 to the power of 124. It's a 1 followed by 124 zeros. It's just abstract noise.
It really is.
To put this in perspective, there are only about 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the entire observable universe.
Right.
So if you took every single atom in every star, planet, and galaxy and magically turned every single atom into a 1 terabyte hard drive, you still wouldn't have even a fraction of the storage space required to hold 10 to the 124 bits.
Not even close.
But as impossible as the data storage sounds, the energy requirement is the real killer, right?
Exactly. Remembering Landauer's principle that manipulating information costs physical energy, Vasa calculated the minimum energy required just to encode that colossal amount of information.
Just to write the code.
Yes, and he was generous. He assumed this hypothetical computer was perfectly efficient and cooled to the absolute lowest ambient temperature possible in our universe, which is the cosmic microwave background temperature.
Right, about 2.7 Kelvin.
Exactly. Even under those perfect impossible conditions, the encoding energy required is roughly 8.9 times 10 to the power of 108 ergs.
Ergs being a scientific unit of energy, and how does that number compare to the actual energy available to us?
That comparison is the fatal blow to the idea of a full-scale simulation. Vasa calculated the total mass energy of the entire observable universe itself.
Using E equals mc squared.
Exactly. He took every star, every galaxy, all the mysterious dark matter, the supermassive black holes, everything, and converted it into its energy equivalent.
And what's the number?
The total energy of the universe is about 2.7 times 10 to the power of 78 ergs.
Wow, let that sink in. The energy required just to write the code for the simulation is 10 to the 108 ergs, but the entire universe only contains 10 to the 78 ergs.
Right.
To power this machine, you would need 30 orders of magnitude more energy than currently exists in the entire cosmos combined.
Precisely. If the energy of information is massively greater than the total energy of the universe, there simply are not enough physical resources within the entire observable universe to simulate another similar universe down to its Planck scale.
You couldn't even power the machine long enough to boot up the operating system.
No, the conclusion from a strict physics perspective is unavoidable. Simulating the entirety of our visible universe at a full 1-to-1 resolution is physically impossible.
Okay, that feels definitive. But, I mean, I have to play devil's advocate again because anyone who plays video games is already screaming at their device right now.
I can hear them from here.
Right. When you play a massive open world game, the computer doesn't render the entire continent all at once. That would instantly crash the console.
It uses view, frustum culling, things like that.
Exactly. It only renders the high-resolution graphics right where your character's looking. The trees behind you or the city on the other side of the map aren't fully drawn until you walk over there.
Right, rendering on demand.
So what if the simulators are tricking us? What if they aren't simulating the whole universe? What if they only simulate the Earth at high resolution and the rest of the cosmos, the distant stars, the galaxies we see through telescopes, is just a flat 2D high-res skybox, like a painted backdrop on a movie set?
It is a very logical counter-argument. If the goal of the simulator is only to trick human observers, they only need to simulate our immediate environment and render the rest on demand.
So did Vasa look at that?
He did. Vasa ran the numbers for that exact scenario as well. A full resolution simulation of just the planet Earth down to the quantum level while faking the rest of the universe.
And we'd build?
The numbers are still completely insane. To simulate just the Earth, you need about 9.8 times 10 to the power of 74 bits of information.
Okay.
The minimum energy needed to code this information is 2.5 times 10 to the power of 59 ergs.
Again, abstract numbers. Let's make this real for people. How much energy is 10 to the 59 ergs?
It's equivalent to the rest mass energy of an entire globular stellar cluster.
So imagine taking hundreds of thousands of massive stars and converting every single atom of every single star directly into pure computing energy.
And that's just to start the Earth simulation. Or, to put it another way, it's roughly the energy required to physically rip apart the entire dark matter halo of the Milky Way galaxy.
And that is just the raw power needed. We also have to consider the physical mass of the computer required to house that much information, right?
Yes. According to the absolute limits of black hole physics, if you try to pack that much energy into a single space without it gravitationally collapsing into a black hole of unworkable proportions, you end up with a planetary-sized machine.
So what does the hard drive look like?
The hard drive for this Earth-only simulation would effectively have to be a black hole operating as a computer, roughly 70% the size of the planet Jupiter.
A Jupiter-sized black hole acting as a hard drive, just to simulate the Earth. And it gets worse, because that energy requirement is just the setup. To actually run the simulation, to move time forward frame by frame and let humans interact with the world, you have to constantly feed that Jupiter-sized machine equivalent amounts of energy every single fraction of a second.
And remember, Landauer's principle. You have to somehow vent all the unimaginable heat it generates without instantly vaporizing the computer. It is absurd.
Which brings us to a profound realization, one that completely shifts how we view the entire simulation hypothesis. Voss's conclusion isn't necessarily that we aren't in a simulation.
No, his conclusion is much more specific.
It is physically impossible to simulate this universe using a computer that operates under the physical laws of this universe.
What's fascinating here is the Pac-Man epiphany. This is my favorite analogy from the sources.
Oh, the Pac-Man analogy is great. Let's break that down.
If you're having trouble grasping this, think about the character Pac-Man and his little 2D neon maze. Pac-Man is running around eating dots, dodging ghosts.
Right.
If Pac-Man somehow became conscious and tried to become a physicist to deduce the fundamental laws of his reality, what would he measure?
He would measure things in terms of pixel movement, ghost algorithms, and the energy output of a power pellet. That's all he has access to.
Exactly. And using only the physics available to him inside the maze, Pac-Man could never deduce the existence of the physical arcade machine he is running on.
Because he's trapped in the 2D world.
Right. He could never comprehend the 3D physical room the arcade cabinet sits in, the electricity powering the cathode ray tube monitor, or the silicon microprocessor executing his code. The laws of physics inside the simulation are completely disconnected from the laws of physics of the base reality running the simulation.
So if we are simulated, the beings running our simulation aren't using atoms or quarks or our version of gravity to build their computers. Base reality has completely alien physics.
They're operating in a universe with thermodynamic rules and spatial dimensions we can't even begin to imagine.
If you are having an aha moment right now, if you love having your mind expanded like this, contemplating the terrifying and awe-inspiring idea that base reality might be entirely alien to our understanding, make sure to subscribe to Decoding the Dark and leave a like on this video. It really helps us keep diving into the deepest mysteries of the cosmos with you.
It truly is a humbling thought. But, despite the mathematical proof that a one-to-one simulation requires alien physics, physicists in our universe are a stubborn bunch.
They really are.
They're not giving up. Even if simulating our reality is insanely difficult, some researchers believe that if we are a computer program, the program might have flaws.
Because a simulation, no matter how advanced, is an approximation.
Exactly. They are actively looking for the pixels or the underlying code of our universe.
How exactly do you look for glitches in the matrix? Because if a computer is running this show, the math tells us it can't be infinitely smooth. It has to have a resolution. You can't calculate infinity on a hard drive.
This brings us to the fascinating research of physicist Silas Bean and his colleagues, who work with something called lattice QCD.
Quantum chromodynamics.
Yes. When physicists try to run their own simulations of the strong nuclear force on our supercomputers, they run into the exact same thermodynamic problem we just discussed. You can't simulate a continuous, infinitely divisible space.
Right, because if space is infinitely smooth, then between point A and point B, there are an infinite number of points, which requires infinite memory to compute.
So, to make the simulation work on a computer, they have to discretize space. They have to break it down into a grid, a 3D lattice.
It's exactly like how a digital photograph looks perfectly smooth from a distance, but if you zoom in enough, you see that it's actually made of distinct, square, rigid pixels.
Exactly. So the theory is, If we are a simulation, our universe must also have a pixel limit. There must be a smallest possible unit of space on a rigid grid.
But how do we find the pixels of the universe? We can't just pull out a giant magnifying glass.
Being proposed looking for what is called rotational symmetry breaking. In a perfectly continuous natural universe, space is perfectly symmetrical. A particle traveling in a straight line should behave exactly the same way with the same physical constraints regardless of what direction it's going.
Right.
But if space is a discrete grid, a lattice, that perfect symmetry is fundamentally broken.
Hold on, you lost me. Why does moving diagonally break physics?
Let me give you an analogy. Imagine a chessboard. If a rook moves straight along the ranks or files, it is moving parallel to the grid. It moves cleanly from square to square.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if a bishop moves diagonally, it is technically cutting across the corners of the grid squares. On a subatomic level, if our universe is a grid, moving diagonally across the 3D pixels requires a slightly different mathematical calculation than moving straight along the axis.
Ah, I see. So Bean's team realized that this pixelation would affect the behavior of the most energetic particles in the universe.
Yes, ultra-high energy cosmic rays. These are particles traveling across the cosmos at nearly the speed of light.
So if space is a lattice, these cosmic rays would interact with the grid in a way that artificially limits their maximum energy, or changes their distribution depending on the angle they travel across the grid's axis.
Exactly.
So the idea is we point our massive particle detectors at the sky and look for cosmic rays behaving weirdly, moving slightly slower diagonally than they do straight ahead.
That's the idea.
What did we find? Did we see the grid?
Well, so far we haven't found the grid. The cosmic rays we observe appear perfectly isotropic, meaning they behave identically in all directions with no sign of grid interference.
So does that mean we aren't in a simulation?
Not necessarily. It doesn't disprove the simulation hypothesis. What it does is place incredibly strict physical constraints on it. Based on the cosmic ray data we have gathered, physicists have determined that if there is a lattice, the pixels of our universe must be unimaginably tiny.
How tiny?
Smaller than 10 to the negative 27 meters. In physics terminology, that's an inverse lattice spacing bound of 10 to the power of 11 GeV.
So we haven't found the edge of the simulation, but we know that if it's there, the graphics are rendered at a resolution smaller than 10 to the negative 27 meters. That is absurdly high definition.
It really is.
But looking for geometric pixels isn't the only way to hunt for the code. There's a brand new approach that looks not at the shape of space, but at the fundamental behavior of information itself.
This is perhaps one of the most exciting and controversial recent developments in this field. In 2023, physicist Melvin Vopson proposed a brand new physical law.
Okay, let's hear it.
We are all familiar with the second law of thermodynamics, which dictates that the physical entropy or chaos of an isolated system always increases over time. The universe tends toward disorder.
Right. If you drop a glass, it shatters into a chaotic mess. It never spontaneously reassembles itself. Physical entropy always goes up.
Precisely. But Vopson decided to look at systems that store information, like digital data or DNA or atomic structures. Specifically, he analyzed the RNA mutations of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the virus responsible for COVID-19.
Interesting. Why a virus?
Because it mutates so rapidly. As the virus mutated over time, becoming more complex and varied, you would naturally expect the information entropy, the measure of disorder or uncertainty within its genetic code, to increase, just like physical entropy does.
Yeah, that makes intuitive sense. More mutations, more chaos.
But Vopson discovered a shocking pattern and proposed the second law of infodynamics. Yes. This law states that, unlike physical entropy, information entropy must remain constant or decrease over time.
Decrease?
Yes. When he looked at the COVID variants, he found that the virus was actually optimizing its genetic information, deleting unnecessary code, and becoming more streamlined even as it mutated.
Okay, wait, let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this. The physical universe is getting more chaotic, expanding, getting messier. But the information embedded in the universe is getting tighter, more ordered, and shedding unnecessary data.
Yes. And this creates what Vopson calls an entropic paradox. As the universe expands and physical entropy skyrockets, how does the underlying information entropy stay perfectly balanced or decrease? How does nature manage this growing discrepancy without violating the laws of physics?
It seems like a huge contradiction.
Vopson suggested a radical mind-bending solution, that the universe is actively employing a physical data compression mechanism.
A data compression mechanism, like the universe is zipping files.
Essentially, yes. And Vopson proposes that gravity itself might be that physical data compression mechanism. Gravity pulls matter together, restricting its possible states, which mathematically compresses the information required to describe that matter.
Wow. So if we look at this from a computer science perspective, if you have a system that is actively running data compression algorithms to manage the growing complexity of its environment, automatically deleting redundant code and keeping information entropy low to save space.
What does that sound like?
That sounds exactly like a computer managing its RAM. I mean, if you play a video game, the computer doesn't render every individual leaf on a tree if you were standing a mile away. It compresses the data. It renders a single low-resolution green blob to save processing power. As you get closer, it decompresses the data and renders the leaves.
Yeah.
Is Vopson saying the universe is doing that?
It is a striking and undeniable parallel. The mathematical symmetry required for the second law of infodynamics to work, and the idea of universal data compression, can be interpreted as physical evidence that our universe is built on computational principles.
That's incredible.
It behaves precisely the way software behaves when it's trying to optimize memory usage and prevent a system crash.
So what does this all mean? Okay, if we accept Vopson's infodynamics and assume our universe is actively compressing data like a giant ZIP file, where is the physical hard drive storing that data?
That's the next logical question.
It has to exist outside our universe, right? If our universe is a simulation, it absolutely demands that there is a larger reality outside of it. The arcade cabinet has to sit in a room somewhere.
Which brings us to the broader theoretical landscape of the multiverse. Because the simulation hypothesis doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is just one piece of a massive nested puzzle of realities.
To understand where our simulated reality might fit into the grander scheme, we can look at the taxonomy of the multiverse proposed by MIT cosmologist Max Tegmark.
Right, Tegmark realized that physicists were using the word multiverse to describe vastly different theories, so he categorized them into 4 distinct levels of increasing complexity.
Let's explore these levels to give a sense of scale, because Tegmark's framework is mind-expanding, and it perfectly sets the stage for where the simulation lives. Level 1. The quilted or ergodic multiverse. What is this?
Level 1 is actually the least controversial among cosmologists because it doesn't require any exotic new physics. It just relies on standard, accepted astronomical observations.
Okay, so it's based on things we actually see.
Yes, it simply states that if space is infinite, which current cosmic microwave background observations suggest it very well might be, and if the distribution of matter is relatively uniform on massive scales, then every single possible configuration of matter must eventually be realized somewhere out there in infinite space.
Because if you roll a finite set of dice an infinite number of times, eventually you will roll the exact same sequence again.
Exactly. There's only a finite number of ways to arrange the quantum particles inside a given volume of space, a volume we call a Hubble volume.
And the observable universe we can see, stretching 46 billion light years in every direction, is just one Hubble volume. It is a finite bubble.
But beyond our cosmic horizon, there are infinitely more bubbles. Because the number of possible particle arrangements within a Hubble volume is finite, the math dictates that in an infinite space, exact repetitions must occur.
Wait, meaning what?
Meaning your exact physical doppelganger, someone genetically identical to you, sitting in an identical room listening to this exact deep dive, must exist in an identical cosmic pocket, roughly 10 to the power of 29 meters away.
That distance is unfathomable, but it's a mathematical necessity of infinite space. So that's level 1, infinite copies of our physics. What's level 2?
Level 2 is the inflationary bubble multiverse. This comes from the widely accepted theory of eternal chaotic inflation. In the very early microscopic fractions of a second after the Big Bang, space expanded exponentially. The theory suggests that while our specific bubble of space stopped inflating, cooled down, and settled into the stars and galaxies we see today, the space between bubbles keeps inflating eternally.
So it's constantly expanding.
Yes. This eternal expansion constantly spawns an infinite number of disconnected pocket universes.
Like bubbles forming in a loaf of baking bread, but the bread expands forever in all directions. And the key difference in level 2 is that these different bubbles can have different physical constants, right?
Correct.
So in another bubble, gravity might be 10 times stronger, or the speed of light might be sluggish, because the quantum symmetry broke differently when that specific bubble cooled.
Exactly. The fundamental equations might be the same, but the dials are tuned differently. Then we move to level 3, the quantum many-worlds multiverse.
Ah, many worlds. I know this one.
This is based on physicist Hugh Everett's interpretation of quantum mechanics. unlike levels 1 and 2, which are infinitely far away in physical space. Level 3 occupies the exact same physical space we do.
But it's separated across different branches, right?
Yes, across a multi-dimensional mathematical space called a Hilbert space. Every time a quantum event occurs, every time an electron could spin up or spin down, every time a photon could go left or right, the universe physically branches into multiple parallel realities, each realizing a different outcome.
This is the famous Schrodinger's cat scenario. In one branch of reality, the cat is alive. In another branch that occupies the same space, it's dead. Reality splits constantly, creating a staggering number of parallel timelines.
It's dizzying to think about.
Okay, so we have infinite physical space, expanding bubble universes with different gravity, and constantly splitting quantum timelines. Where does the computer running the simulation fit into all of this?
To find the ultimate home for the simulation, we have to look at Tegmark's final, most radical category, level 4. The ultimate mathematical ensemble.
Okay.
Tegmark argues that physical reality isn't just described by mathematics, it fundamentally is mathematical structure. And under this hypothesis, every single mathematically consistent structure exists physically.
Wait, Platonism on steroids. If a mathematician can write an equation that doesn't contradict itself, a physical universe literally springs into existence based on that math.
Yes. If the math works, the universe exists. And physicist Brian Greene actually expanded on Tegmark's ideas, proposing 9 specific types of multiverses in his book, The Hidden Reality. He explicitly includes the simulated multiverse as one of those types.
Oh, wow.
And if we connect this back to our Pac-Man analogy, level 4 is the key to solving Voss's energy problem. Level 4 allows for the possibility that the universe running our simulation operates on a completely fundamentally different mathematical structure than ours.
So our simulated existence is just a mathematical object nested within another reality, which itself might be a mathematical object nested within another.
Exactly.
The physics of the arcade cabinet don't have to match the physics of Pac-Man because in a level 4 multiverse, every consistent rulebook gets its own universe. The beings running our simulation have access to infinite energy because their mathematical structure allows for it.
That's the beauty of it. The simulation isn't just a computer program running on a physical hard drive. It is the physical realization of a specific mathematical structure, housed within a higher level, infinitely more complex mathematical structure.
Okay, we have covered the philosophical logic of Bostrom, the crushing physical energy limits of Vasa, the glitches in the cosmic rays, Vopson's data compression, and the vast mathematical multiverse where this computer might be sitting.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But we have to address the elephant in the room. Not everyone buys this. In fact, many mainstream physicists actively despise the simulation hypothesis. We have to look at the fierce skepticism.
We absolutely do, because for all the elegant philosophy and the mind-bending multiverse math, there are severe, grounded scientific critiques. Let's look at the arguments raised by theoretical physicist Sabine Hossenfelder. She is a prominent, incredibly sharp critic of the hypothesis, and her arguments cut right to the core of the scientific method.
Let me play the devil's advocate using her perspective, because honestly, she makes a lot of sense. She basically argues that saying we live in a simulation and an advanced programmer designed it is just a modern tech bro version of saying God did it.
That is the crux of her critique, the God of the gaps argument. She argues that the simulation hypothesis is intellectually lazy. It intrudes on the terrain of physics, making incredibly bold claims about the fundamental nature of reality, space, and time. But it completely ignores the rigorous laws of nature that physicists have spent centuries uncovering through agonizingly hard work.
Right, because if you are a physicist and you hit a wall in your equations, or you find a particle behaving weirdly and you just throw your hands up and say, well, the programmer must have hard-coded it that way to save memory, you stop doing science.
Exactly.
It teleports us back to the age of mythology, where lightning wasn't atmospheric static discharge, it was just Zeus being angry. It shuts down curiosity.
Furthermore, she points out specific, glaring physical contradictions in the simulation theorists' arguments. We talked earlier about Silas Bean and the search for a discretized, pixelated universe using lattice key CD. Hossenfelder points out that a discretized universe clashes violently with special relativity.
How so?
Well, if space is broken into a rigid grid, it creates what physicists call preferred frames of reference. It essentially gives the universe an absolute coordinate system. But This violates Lorentz invariance, a foundational cornerstone of Einstein's theory of relativity.
Lorentz invariance. Okay, explain that.
Lorentz invariance basically means the laws of physics shouldn't change just because you're moving in a different direction or at a different speed. A grid shatters that rule. Physicists have looked incredibly hard for the effects of these violations, and they haven't found them. Relativity holds up perfectly.
And the simulation proponents usually respond to that by saying, well, the programmer is just really good at hiding the pixels, or they program the simulation to erase the Lorentz contradictions whenever we look too closely through our telescopes.
Which brings us right back to the religion argument. If you can explain away every contradictory piece of evidence by saying the omnipotent simulator is just tricking us, the hypothesis loses all predictive power. It ceases to be falsifiable science and becomes an article of blind faith.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Hassenfelder also argues that nested simulations, where parts of the simulation attempt to build computers to run their own simulations, would force the base computer to reproduce physical laws on exponentially shorter and shorter distance scales.
Which is mathematically incompatible with what we know about physical laws and quantum mechanics. But here's where it gets really interesting. Just when the mainstream physicists think they've definitively killed the simulation argument by pointing out the computational degradation limits of nested simulations, the mathematicians come back swinging.
Oh, yes, they do.
In late 2025, mathematician David Wolpert released a paper that completely reshaped the debate.
And this is where the math gets truly dizzying. For a long time, the assumption was exactly what Hassenfelder pointed out, that nested simulations must inevitably degrade.
Right.
If Universe A simulates Universe B, and the inhabitants of Universe B build a computer to simulate Universe C will be glitchy, slow, and low resolution because it's limited by the hardware of Universe B, which is already limited by Universe A.
It's like taking a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. Eventually, it becomes an unreadable, pixelated blur.
Therefore, chains of simulations must eventually terminate. You can't simulate infinitely downward.
But Wolpert used a concept from advanced computer science to completely blow that assumption out of the water. He looked at something called Kleen's second recursion theorem. What does this theorem actually prove?
Kleen's recursion theorem is a foundational, ironclad mathematical result in computability theory. In programming, there's a concept called a quine.
A quine.
Q-U-I-N-E. A quine is a computer program that takes no input and produces a copy of its own source code as its only output. Kleen proved mathematically that a computer program can generate and run an exact perfect copy of itself without degrading. A program can contain its own source code and execute it with perfect fidelity. Wolpert took this mathematical proof from computer science and audaciously applied it to the physical concept of entire simulated universes.
And the implications are staggering. If a program can perfectly simulate itself without acting like a blurry photocopy, then if Universe A is running a simulation of Universe B, there is absolutely nothing in the mathematics preventing Universe B from simulating Universe A right back.
Exactly. Wolpert showed that under certain mathematical assumptions regarding computational complexity and self-reference, the two universes become mathematically indistinguishable from each other.
That is insane.
You can have closed, self-sustaining loops of universes simulating each other. Universe A simulates B, B simulates C, and C simulates A.
It's an M.C. Escher drawing, but with entire universes. The famous drawing of a hand holding a pencil, drawing a second hand, which is holding a pencil, drawing the first hand. If Wolpert's math holds up, this completely erases the entire hierarchy of higher and lower realities. There is no photocopy degradation. Infinite chains or infinite closed loops of simulated universes remain fully consistent within the mathematical theory.
It creates a philosophical landscape far stranger and more disorienting than Bostrom's original trilemma. If universes can simulate each other in a closed loop, it fundamentally shatters our philosophical account of identity.
In a mathematical sense, there could be multiple versions of you existing across these loop simulations, driving in your car, listening to this deep dive, and all of them are, strictly speaking, the mathematically real you. My brain is officially melting. We have gone on an incredible journey today.
We really have.
We started with ancient philosophers staring at shadows on a cave wall. We moved to post-human gods running hard drives the size of Jupiter. We hunted for glitches and cosmic rays. We explored infinite loops of mathematical realities generating each other. And we looked at the fierce skepticism of mainstream physicists defending the laws of relativity.
It is a lot to take in.
It is time to pull all these threads together.
Let's synthesize everything we've uncovered in this deep dive. We've explored the simulation hypothesis from every conceivable angle. We looked at Bostrom's probabilistic argument, which suggests that if we survive and advance as a species, statistics dictate we are almost certainly simulated.
And we looked at Voss's brutal astrophysical constraints, which prove that a one-to-one simulation of our universe requires energy vastly exceeding the universe itself, demanding that any base reality must operate on utterly alien physics.
We looked for glitches in the matrix, finding incredibly strict limits on the pixelation of spacetime through lattice QCD.
And exploring Vopson's new laws of infodynamics that treat gravity like a cosmic zip file compressing data.
We placed the simulation within Tegmark's Level 4 mathematical multiverse, and we explored the fierce pushback from physicists like Hassenfelder, who demand falsifiable science over the mythology of a digital creator.
And finally, we saw Wolpert's recursion mathematics, which opens the door to infinite self-sustaining loops of realities without a distinct top or bottom.
Whether we are a string of code running on a Jupiter-sized black hole, a conscious subroutine playing out Bostrom's trilemma to satisfy the curiosity of our descendants, or simply biological beings existing in an infinitely expanding Level 1 multiverse, there is a profound, beautiful takeaway here.
What's that?
The very fact that human beings, sitting on a rocky planet orbiting an average star, can mathematically conceptualize the outer limits of our own existence is an astonishing feat. It is the universe trying to understand itself.
It really is. And I want to leave you with a perspective from philosopher David Chalmers. He looks at all this terrifying math and argues that we shouldn't despair even if we find out we are just lines of code. What does the word real actually mean? Even if our bodies are virtual, even if our universe is being rendered by a machine we can't comprehend, our emotions, our relationships, our suffering, and our joy are genuinely real to us. The experience of consciousness is undeniable, regardless of the substrate. Virtual reality, as Chalmers profoundly says, is a genuine reality.
It is a vital and deeply human comfort. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to ponder as you go about your day.
Okay.
If David Wolpert's mathematics of recursion are correct, if simulated universes can literally simulate their own creators in a perfect, unbreakable, closed loop, then we have to ask a terrifying question. Does the concept of a base reality even exist?
Oh, man.
Or is existence just an infinite loop of mirrors facing each other with absolutely no original image to be found anywhere in the multiverse?
An infinite hall of mirrors. That is going to keep me up at night. Look down at your hands one more time. Look at the device you are holding. Is it hardware? Is it software? Maybe, in the grand recursion-looped mathematics of the multiverse, the difference between the two is just an illusion. If your brain is buzzing as much as ours is right now, please don't forget to subscribe to Decoding the Dark and like this video. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment below on whether you think we are sitting in base reality or if we are just an incredibly well-rendered simulation. Until next time, keep questioning everything.